Talk about that Steve Bannon piece. It's rather interesting. This is coming from a book written by Michael Wolff. And, you know, I think Steve Bannon's a fairly calculating guy for all his horridness. And this is what he said in Michael Wolff's new book. 3 senior guys, maybe we can get a clip up, just an image. 3 senior guys in the campaign thought it was a good idea to meet with a foreign government inside Trump Tower in the conference room on the 25th floor with no lawyers. These 3 senior guys, of course, were Manafort, Don Jr., and Kushner. They didn't have any lawyers. Even if you thought that this was not treasonous or unpatriotic or bad shit, and I happen to think it's all of that, you should have called the FBI immediately. Bannon went on, Wolff writes, to say that if any such meeting had to take place, it should have been set up in a Holiday Inn in Manchester, New Hampshire, with your lawyers who meet with these people. Any information, he said, could then be dumped down to Breitbart or something like that, or maybe some other more legitimate publication. I wonder if he actually knew he was saying that.
Totally.
Yeah.
He is very...
Well, here is what he knew, okay, going into the 2016 election. Actually, this is 2015. He knew that because there were cutbacks at newspapers for investigative resources, he knew that the media would jump at the opportunity to have so-called investigative reporting if it was perceived from a nonpartisan source. So he set up a foundation. I can't remember what the name of it is now off the top of my head. Center for Responsible or Investigative Journalism, something to that effect, with Mercer money. And they hired the guy who wrote Clinton Cash. The guy who wrote Clinton Cash also wrote one about Jeb Bush, incidentally. Oddly enough, did not bother to look into Donald Trump, where I'm sure there was a lot of stuff to investigate. The Center for Responsible Investigative Journalism, whatever it was called, made a deal with the New York Times to publish pieces of that book and use the reporting from there. And that's where you got all the email stuff, all the scandals were generated out of that.
The Government Accountability Institute.
Yes, the Government Accountability Institute.
That's what he means by more legitimate.
And so this guy is very conscious of the media food chain. And he's very conscious of what he's doing. He doesn't go out and say this stuff here unless he's got an agenda. Now, we know he hasn't liked Kushner. You recall back in like March of last year when there were stories that was actually on the week that we bombed Syria. Can't remember exactly when that was, but he was at war with Kushner. And he said, at one point, meetings that Kushner had are going to come out. It's going to be a real problem. He goes on to say, you never see it, you never know it because you don't need to. But that's the brain trust that they had. Speaking of those guys. You realize where this is going. This is all about money laundering. Not to pat myself on the shoulder, but if you go back to what we were saying about the Russian connections, the investigations at this time last year, in fact, probably in December of 2016, you will see that we were saying this is all about money laundering because we had spoken to Wayne Barrett before his death and a couple of people who had been investigating and doing journalism on Donald Trump for a long time. This is all about money laundering. Mueller chose senior prosecutor Andrew Weissman first, and he is a money laundering guy. Their path to effing Trump goes right through Paul Manafort, Don Jr., and Jared Kushner. It's as plain as a hair on your face.
Or a hooker in your tub.
And then he goes on to say, because you'll recall it was reported last week that federal prosecutors had subpoenaed records from Deutsche Bank, and prosecutors in the Eastern Division, I think it was in New York, the Brooklyn Division, were looking into the Deutsche Bank as well, specifically in regards to Kushner. Bannon continues, it goes through Deutsche Bank and all the Kushner shit. The Kushner shit is greasy. They're going to go right through that. They're going to roll those guys up and say, play me or trade me. Which I think must mean something to the effect of like, you either give me the goods on somebody or you're going to jail. They're going to crack Don Jr. like an egg on national television. Woo. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Bannon has left the building. You know, when he left, there was that famous quote. He said, "I'm going to go and fight and work for Donald Trump on the outside." And what Bannon was saying at that time is, "I'm going to go on the outside, and Donald Trump is going to work for me." Steve Bannon has an agenda that Donald Trump helped him with, but it's secondary. Remember, his first guy was Ted Cruz. Right? Wasn't he? He and the Mercers were Ted Cruz people.
I think he also went through. He went through a Palin phase. He did a doc about her, I think, in 2011.
That's right.
He went through a brief. He hyped Carson briefly. He's been looking for a vessel for all of his,
the fourth turning.
This is a New York Times.
Go ahead.
There's a New York Times headline that just came through the wire on my phone and said, President Trump says Bannon has lost his mind after he insulted his son.
Yes. Run, Bannon. Run.
Oh, my
Republican
2018
primary
is coming
challenge.
in hot, folks.
Come on, brother. No, but you know what I think the thing that's fascinating about Bannon is that he's like, on the surface, everybody has this understanding of him that he's this totally grotesque, despicable, racist, alt-right, but figure. And he is. And then if you scratch the surface in these profiles and everything, you also have to realize that certainly for this gang of people, he's savvy, he's smart, kind of has a sense of how things operate. And then I think you scratch the next level of surface and you're like, yeah, and he is fundamentally deranged and monstrous. Like all these other people are just surface level. They're just horrible people. They're the worst humanity has to offer, and that's it. Him, there's a little bit more going on, but he's fundamentally deranged.
Here's the thing, is that he is one of the few that has a very, very strict ideology. The others surrounding Donald Trump are there for the cash. And Bannon is there because he has a very demented ideology that I think is some version of like some secular apocalyptic thing.
And not even necessarily that. I mean, he's got like a lot of these. He does have some kind of hard right Catholicism and interest.
Oh, is he like an Opus Dei type? I don't think
maybe
so.
even more to the right. He has an interest in a certain type of kind of like religious perennialism. It's out there. And that fourth turning stuff is...
I have the full statement from the President of the United States right now.
Yes.
On Steve Bannon.
Yeah.
I will read the full statement from the President of the United States. Steve Bannon has nothing to do with me or my presidency. When he was fired, he not only lost his job, he lost his mind. Steve was a staffer who worked for me after I had already won the nomination by defeating 17 candidates, often described as the most talented field ever assembled in the Republican Party. Now that he is on his own, Steve is learning that winning isn't as easy as I make it look. Steve had very little to do with our historic victory, which was delivered by the forgotten men and women of this country. Yet Steve had everything to do with the loss of a Senate seat in Alabama held for more than 30 years by Republicans. Steve doesn't represent my base. He's only in it for himself. Steve pretends to be at war with the media, which he calls the opposition party. Yet he spent his whole time at the White House leaking false information to the media to make himself seem more important than he was. It's the only thing he does well. Steve was rarely in a one-on-one meeting with me and only pretends to have had influence to fool a few people with no access and no clue whom he helped write phony books. You can hear Scaramucci, like right here, like, Donald, tell him that he sucked his own dick. We've had a great...
Not only that guy
we've
looked
had
like a sieve, he couldn't even suck his own dick.
We've had many great Republican members of Congress and candidates who are very supportive of the Make America Great Again agenda. Like me, they love the United States of America and are helping to finally take our country back and build it up, rather than simply seeking to burn it all down. Wow.
Ah, this is going to be beautiful.
That is so sad.
It is very sad.
Isn't it? It's so sad.
It's a lot of... No, he's very in his fifis about this.
It's so sad.
Trump's in his bag.
It's really, I mean, you know, Scaramucci is going to come back now. Reince Priebus is going to come back. I wonder what Kelly's going to do. Like, where Reince is going to be getting the coffee.
Yeah,
you know, because all these people realize, like, they can't get hired now. Once you work for the Trump administration, that's the key. You basically either go to Breitbart because you run it,
right,
or you end up on Fox if you're lucky. I mean, how long did it take Sean Spicer to land at Fox? Like 8 months? Like, he desperately...
Also, is he even a contributor? I mean, he was there, but I don't know if he's a contributor.
I think he's a contributor.
Okay.
I will guarantee you this. There is not a single door. There is not a single doorbell. There's not a single mailing address that Sean Spicer did not send his resume to looking for a job. The last place he wanted to go was Fox News because it was the most obvious place. He wanted to go anywhere else.
I thought you should have given a ZipRecruiter submission to us.
Exactly.
I actually thought that he would. I thought he would try, and it wouldn't have lasted anyways because I'm sure he would want to make more money. But I thought his play was going to be like, I'm head of some like Catholic charity. Yeah. Like really, really try to be like, see, I'm really a good person.
That would have been the smart move.
Chuck
but let's face it. If you go and work for Donald Trump,
well, no,
it's not even smart.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I agree with you. I don't think the Catholic charity would accept his help.
Well,
Yeah,
I think that would be his desire.
He may have asked.
Yeah.
He may have asked.
But that's what I was thinking. He's going to try to, I don't know what the largest, like whatever the, what is it, the Jewish World Service, like whatever the Catholic equivalent of that is.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt he went there. And I wouldn't doubt they said, no.
Yeah, this actually isn't going to help our poverty relief efforts to be associated with the like anxiety-ridden, misshapen like mouthpiece of American fascism.
Sean, if you want, I will take your confession, but we're not going to use our charity as your Reformation project.
It's not a charity
We're not here.
for you, Sean.
We're not a crisis management firm. Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos